Yeah, in the last post I messed up. I kind of made a gaffe trying to rush to hurry up, like after reading so much. Um, I had said that the Anya chakra was blue, and it probably didn't help that I was reading about and trying to find more. I think the same day or around the time I did that post, I was reading or like watching videos about the Mount Chiliad mystery to see if like where it led, and then also to see where in the story and what exactly this symbol relates to. And apparently it's really just Clifford. But that's what I was like thinking of, kind of like I wasn't really thinking of it, but it's what was fresh in my mind. And when I was like thinking of how, like, I was kind of thinking of the blue orb and then just overlooked Vishuddha and was thinking of the Anya because essentially this is almost like an Anya chakra, although none of the actual chakra symbols have an upright triangle. In talking about the 96 petals, essentially, which I didn't realize it, but all the lower petals below that chakra, they say the Anya chakra is like double in strength than the lower, but the 16 Vishuddha, 12 Anahata, 10 Manipura, 6 Svadhisthana, and 4 Muladhara doubled makes the 96. And I don't know, like I was just so focused on Anya, I was trying to just make it fit, I guess. But I left it in because I wanted to bring it up and go further into some of the like just weird connections and what it made me think of. The blue light, like as a concept, is something that was brought up by like a friend a long time ago who, after years of telling me they were going to make a video about like the symbolism and the like their knowledge on it, they ended up denying ever saying anything about it or even knowing what I was talking about. And I don't know exactly why or like what that was about. But many of the things I didn't even really know about, they told me about and made the connection even with Blue Book, Project Blue Book, the concept of Project Blue Beam, um, various connections to blue. And it just makes me think of that and how there's some sort of like, I call it the blue light technology, and I had mentioned it in relation to, again, not just the orb that I saw and how almost traumatizing, but also amplifying that event of seeing it come in my window like it was nothing and then fly back out when I opened my eyes and saw it and like felt extreme panic. And I had kind of been opening myself up, so to speak, to experiences, but I wasn't expecting that. And then the creepiness of it when I was like kind of asleep and how routine it seemed. And then again, I mentioned in post 95 mainly the Watchers series by Raymond Fowler, and how much like there's certain similarities, but then the blue light being instrumental essentially in the beginning of Betty Andreassen's abduction, or at least her realization of it. And just this blue light, like I I shouldn't have made that uh, error. I should have been more careful. And I don't know if it's because I read so much and just wanted to rush through things, or if it was just a human error of lumping the two together, I guess, and being so focused on the Ajna or Anya. I call it Anya for some reason, but it's not Spanish, it's Ajna. But that's how I read it and perceived it for years before ever talking or hearing about it, like talking to anyone about it or anything. But it's just funny because like little errors when I find them, like notice them, they can also be instrumental in just finding other like extra things you didn't even know about. And I wasn't even thinking about it until just reflecting on that and wondering like why that was the case. But blue, when you apply Hebrew to English, happens to be 43, while purple, oops, Purple, which Kenneth Grant actually calls out by name as another Hebrew applied to Englishism. And 401 plus 43, blue and purple, make 444. Not that that's necessarily important. It's just one of those things where those random connections with context, I guess, or some sort of event or manifestation of them connecting and then you making that connection. But I associate the blue also with finding out about something called chasmalim or hashmal, which really means amber, but it's chasmalim is essentially an order of angels or angelic entities. And despite it relating to amber, which is of course like copperish or orangey in color, it's really the archangels of Chesed, which is the blue Sephira of the Tree of Life. And I don't know if it's because I don't know, like when there's a lot of confusion that can happen when you try to link systems that aren't necessarily linked. And for example, on the Tree of Life, the moon is heavily connected to the Ajna, but it's also the reproductive organs and that whole like the energy, sex drive, libidinal energy. So linking the sort of above and below again, with the moon, with the third eye. And so really the first color essentially encountered outside of Malkuth is purple, where the end of that spectrum right before the abyss is blue, while really the Ajna though is like somewhere I'd read it's the combination of the red and the blue. So, and it makes me think of like a spectrum in a sense, the infrared and ultraviolet spectrum. And so, but I don't know. I'm just saying like this area of focus is what that error, I guess, brought to mind. And because I think there's a lot I still don't understand and want to know more about, like electricity and its role. Like it's, I don't think we fully understand it, along with like, because it's almost like plasma itself. And I don't know. I really can't talk on this, but also this concept of Cherenkov radiation comes to mind because when I've read about it and it's come up, it makes me think of that blue orb and whatever sort of other type of physics that involves. I'm not saying there is a connection, but just this glowing blue. They associate it with like sound or a sonic boom. And then it gets into the whole subject of lasers, which I've mentioned how like the laser is 555, but then Ha Shamir, the Hebrew like cutting torch, they're both 555 essentially. And again, I don't really know where this leads or necessarily what it entails, but in dealing with these mysteries, I guess, they seem to cycle back to certain concepts over and over to the point where, like, as long as you just entertain, for example, like with a gematria database, as long as you retain the codes and just hold on to them, eventually you'll end up seeing like how they fit. That's what I've come to find. And I don't know really what to say about that other than I should be more careful about just being more critical, I guess. But at the same time, I don't know. That's probably like I was like, why would I make that error and think of the Ajna as blue? But it was just all those confluence of subjects plus just that in my mind, which really has no link. I'm just fascinated by Grand Theft Auto's portrayal of whatever like their UFO mysteries and stuff, dealing with the Fort Zancudo and all that, and that elevator. and trying to figure like out if they ever said anything about this. I was thinking it was connected to the Epsilon program, but I guess it's not. And I don't know, but connecting with Lamb and the mysteries of Mu, I really think back to what that single quote Kenneth Grant mentions about the Tuawoi like crystal energy device. Because again, like the linking or the conflating things with color too much is obviously like a setback and a hindrance, because these things are like transdimensional, first of all. But I don't know. That was on my mind, like all these different things, and I've wanted to bring up this blue light concept and its different connections, but again, the fact that I was kind of like just left there alone with having to figure that out myself, and then wonder if I was like what the hell happened to, I don't know. It was like a Mandela effect where something I know someone told me about, and this was an ongoing thing. All of a sudden, they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. They wanted me to tell them more, like as if they had never told me what they told me. But again, I don't know if this connects to the sort of amnesic memory wiping like concept that also keeps coming up in relation to some of this stuff. I really have I'm at a loss of words regarding it. But this post was posted October 31st, 2016. Lamb and the Mysteries of Mu. A curious thread of insight has made its appearance, not just to me recently, but as far back as 1926, with the beginning of the publication by James Churchward of the series of books on the ancient continent of Lemuria or Mu. Although I was aware that these books existed for quite some time, I had yet to familiarize myself with their deeper concepts and symbology, aside from their primary subject, the submergence of Mu. In reading each of the 5 books, however, The Lost Continent of Mu, the first one, The Children of Mu, which is, or no, The Sacred Symbols of Mu is one of my favorites, The Cosmic Forces of Mu, and the second book of The Cosmic Forces of Mu, I have come to find that that alongside some of his geological theories, he has presented many other strands of esoteric wisdom to such a dense degree, it is almost as if he was using the main thesis as a cover for unveiling of such wisdom, especially considering there is much to do with Freemasonry. And his brother, Albert Churchward, was a Freemason whose books on the subject are quite superb, albeit without the sensational conjecture. There are some primary points of interest in these works that I have noticed as relevant to my own work, namely that I was not aware of the deeper meanings of Mu when I attributed it as a formula, essentially, to my talismanic obsidian egg, having not read any of the Churchward, LePlongeon, or any other writings on the subject. Augustus LePlongeon had a book called Queen Mu and the Egyptian Sphinx, which I found kind of really, I mean, I don't know, I like books like that where they just go through all sorts of different stuff. And back then, now some of those aren't credible necessarily, but they still have a sort of air of exploration. And I don't know, I just like those books, as well as those old, like the things that I quoted in the last post, the canon and old Kabbalistic texts like that. Like, I love getting deep into those and then finding, sometimes it's like a passing phrase or sentence or word or whatever that can just have such immense interest, like when you look deeper into it. But anyway, having now read the books, I see that certain symbols reappear as central, primarily the cosmic egg, the serpent or serpents, or Narayana, the 7-headed serpent in particular, the tree, the sun, the swastika, the feather, etc., all of which are ancient Gnostico or Gnostic Kabbalistic symbols. On page 250 of The Sacred Symbols of Mu, it is said that Mu, aside from being the original Garden of Eden, is also the tree of life, which is usually figured within a cosmic egg. Therefore, i.e., Mu equals Eden, which equals the tree, and is therefore cognate with the egg. One of the names given to Mu was the Tree of Life. In this legend, the man and the tree are combined in one. Yet this is not so far wrong, for the sacred writings of Mu tell us that Mu was the Tree of Life and that man was its fruit. This is corroborated where the Sioux legend tells of a great serpent biting off the trees at their roots. A serpent was always the symbol for the waters, and when Mu was destroyed, she was swallowed by the waters. Biting in the Sioux legend is a correct word to use symbolically, for Mu was certainly bitten off from the rest of the land above waters. From these have sprung all the people that now inhabit the earth. Clearly shows that this refers to the migrated children of Mu, and is confirmed by the saying, they wandered off, for they had left the land of their birth where they grew up to go to other lands where they might find living easier. And Mu, again, is the Greek mem equivalent. Mem is also the waters. Although Nu is also heavily associated with like the waters of Nuit, and in general, the navis and navigation, the nave. Mu has the value of 46, which in Crowley's Libri is the number of his translation of Eliphas Levi's The Key of the Mysteries. Levi quotes the serpent of Eden, who is said to have spoken 46 words to Eve in the tree. When you have eaten the fruit of this tree, you will be as the gods. 46 is also the number of Adam, or Aleph plus Daleth plus Aleph plus Mem, archetypal representative of mankind. And the 23 pairs of male and female chromosomes also total 46, therefore implying the tree of life itself is our genetic inheritance through time, the family tree of evolution. 46 is the atomic number of palladium, named after the Greek goddess Pallas, an element symbolic of the alleged secret Freemasonic rite of Baphomet, the image of whom Levi first committed to publication. Baphomet being the archetype of the diune, or really biune, androgynous power of the Azoth or Ein Sof, the limitless light of creation, i.e. the astral light in its coagulation into material forms, wisdom incarnate. See Liber 100 and Liber 414. Mu is also said in The Heart of the Master from 1938 to be the cry of the vulture, and Kenneth Grant in Outer Gateways relates it as the inversion or reversal of the forces of creation, i.e. Om. And as Crowley says in Liber C or 100, for he that reverseth the whirlings of matter is greater than he that worketh in them. Mu is thus key to the mysteries of manifestation, or materialization and destruction. Both Levi and Crowley claim that possession of this key can provide control over nature herself, as Levi himself said. Furthermore, there exists in nature a force which is immeasurably more powerful than steam, and by means of which a single man who knows how to adapt and direct it might upset and alter the face of the world. This force was known to the ancients. It consists in a universal agent having equilibrium for its supreme law, while its direction is concerned immediately with the great arcanum of transcendental magic. This agent is precisely that which the adepts of the Middle Ages denominated the first matter of the great work. The Gnostics represented it as the fiery body of the Holy Spirit. It was the object of adoration in the secret rites of the Sabbath and the temple, under the hieroglyphic figure of Baphomet or the androgyne of Mendes or Mendes. And Crowley thus, this secret is the true key to magic. That is, by the right use of this secret, man may impose his will on nature herself, as will appear hereafter in this comment. In this way, although all recorded knowledge were destroyed, it would be possible for an adept of this secret to restore it. In De Art Magica, Liber 414 from 1914. Kenneth Grant also notes on page 300 of the Ninth Arch that 46 is the key of the mysteries because it designates the male seed and the water, i.e., blood, from which man, Adam, 46, was fashioned. The seed, or sperm, and blood, gluten, are the two components which combine to form the elixir in the OTO system of magic, the red lion for the former and the white eagle for the latter. In this sense, mu could also stand as a notaricon for the idea of mystical union, or also male and female, since F is Vav. Or if Vav be taken for the equivalent of F in female, male and female. On page 456, he says that mu, which is synonymous with Lemuria, is the space-time zone in which the Typhonian current was initiated, i.e., prehistory. Crowley warns against the misuse and abuse of the sex force in the grade papers on the subject. And it is this crime which causes the penalty of incarnation and death in the Abrahamic religions, as well as creation of all worlds through desire and the begetting of illusion. And so I had mentioned in the last post how Kamabala, but I didn't realize it till I was editing it, but Kamabala, which is a sort of lower drive energy, like desire energy essentially, Kama is the same value as Ajna. So Ajna Bala, essentially the force of the third eye, or really the command. Because what's weird is the command center of the Ajna sits at 6. And so again, even though it's the heart chakra, it comes to mind, really the friend, it's the command center of the central force of the Ruach and the whole central channel of the magnetic energy center. But what was coming to mind regarding this is sort of how, I don't know, the blue light just still stuck in my mind, how there's this natural blue light of which sunlight is the primary source. But then LED light, again, is an artificial form. It makes the fact LED light is 96 could be another, that was in my mind. I didn't mention it because technically, again, blue and Ajna, I don't know, they're separate, but the concepts cluster around and relate and connect. I don't know how that works, but there's a positive aspect of the blue light, and then there's a negative aspect, and it seems like the positive seems to relate more to the sunlight and being in balance, whereas the circadian, because it literally balances the circadian or regulates the circadian rhythms, improves alertness, and supports cognitive function, and has general positive effects on well-being. But there's the LED artificial form, LED light, and it can damage the eye, it can damage sleep, and it affects the mind. And so I'm just thinking of how, I don't know, this inversion, this negative, there's always a simulacra of something. And why this made me think of that, I don't know exactly, but I know in the future posts I'm working towards, I end up talking about the natural matrix and the pure simulacra, and really. I don't know. I think of this blue light in relation to it. The sex force, or Kamabala, essentially, being thus that of ever primordial yet ever new creation, can be used for magical purposes, in the sense that it can be applied, I guess, in a conducive way toward life and generation, or if in a certain manner redirected toward dissolution, alteration, and regeneration. Being as it is the one substance of the Narayana Kundalini Addo being the African Nago Voodoo rainbow serpent of the light spectrum, it represents the coiled serpent power that eternally conveys the Promethean fire of creation through the phallic rod, axle, or tower from within to without, Kether Malkuth, essentially the Koth. Note, Grant also mentions that 46 equals Ma, the tower. Ma is also great, old, strong in Sanskrit, denoting the power of the great old ones, titans, or archons. The wry neck of the vulture, the reversion of the primal whirlings of Om and Mu, the tower and the tree of Adam all comport ideas of the origins and ends of the genetic lineage of humanity on planet Earth, and various stellar, cosmic, and transmundane influences which have had their bearings on our development. The seven-headed serpent, or the Narayana being 314, and so the making it 333, is a direct correspondence with the demiurge of Gnostic lore, the seven-headed dragon or beast of Revelation, the seven rays of Lucifer light, the ruach or intellect of the tree of life, and the G, being the seventh letter in the square and compass of the Masons, symbolizing the ray of Gnosis permeating the Grand Lodge. The seven seals, seven vials, and the seven churches, bowls, etc. of the Bible are veils for the seven chakras and their conditions. And later on, I found lampstand, which is another term they use, essentially, in Revelation. Lampstand 666. The seven sins as well relate to the great trials of purification and transformation. In a review of The Apocalypse Unsealed by James Price from 1910, John Yarker, author of The Arcane Schools in 1909, sums up certain premises made by the book. The idea that Revelation is a book of initiation is not altogether new to Freemasons, as the late Dr. George Oliver elaborated that view as at considerable length, but Mr. Price's view is quite a different sort of initiation. It is the development of the semi-miraculous powers of the Gnosis of Clement, Origen, and the early Christian Church, the birth of the divine three principles, the Christos, in the human soul. The key to this unsealing is the text itself, in which is found the numbers 333, 444, 666, 777, 888, 999, and 1000, as applied to the seven principal chakras of the human body, as taught by the Greek yogis. Apart altogether from the possession of a reliable literal translation of the book, there are 75 pages upon the development of the Kundalini, and each subject is followed in the text by a commentary and application. Mr. Price expresses the view that the book is necessarily incomprehensible to the conventional theologian, yet easily comprehended by the esoteric initiate, i.e., by him who possesses the gnosis, and that the drama is perfect in all its parts. I may add that most of this class of initiative books had a double interpretation, and hence that the same may be equally found in the Apocalypse, but into this Mr. Price does not enter. John Yarker, 1910, from The Equinox, Volume 1, Number 6. This, along with those texts quoted in the previous post, prove without a doubt that others long before now have indeed known of these particular keys to the Kabbalah of 9 chambers, albeit had yet to apply the Hebrew formula to English with any assurance there would be a fit, nor to consider such applications in regard to the Book of the Law, and other grimoires or general practical applications. If considered from a bird's eye view with an entire database of consistent formulations, the underlying numerical web of valences is discerned as itself the coils of Apophis, essentially the underlying blueprint of 555, which is also Ha-Nashar, or Ha-Nasher, the eagle, or the illusory veils of quantum reflections multiplied to the nth degree. The matrix of creation, i.e. Nuit, precipitates perspectives, Hadit, which intermingle and interpenetrate to formulate new and more novel complex beings, Rahu or Kuit, which upon death or dissolution are recycled, Set, or Kefra also comes to mind, and through their offspring regenerated at least ideally with additional wisdom and strength, Mayat, thus completing the micro and macrocosmic circuit of Tetragrammaton. That is the word which is spoken through the generation of man. That the gematria of various cultures of distinct genetic descent and widely varying origins, such as that of the Hebrews compared to that of the Mayan or East Indian, or South Indian really, and East Asian, Sanskrit-speaking peoples for that matter, happen to correspond in very precise ways shows indubitably that there are mathematical underpinnings which govern linguistic speech formulations by higher mental faculties than those which we are immediately conscious of before being verbalized via tongue, lip, tooth, and throat patterns, which modulate expelled air. When we speak in any language, be it English, Hebrew, Greek, Spanish, etc., we very rarely have the time to individually pick which words we are going to use. They instead tend to just come to us almost automatically. Again, this ties into the Hindu, if you want to call it that, or Sanskrit concept of sphota, which means to spurt or burst forth, and Davani, which is the parsing element, which I kind of go into in post 76. Anyway, this itself shows that we operate on logical patterns, or at least we try to as best we can. And if you read one of the foundational books on NLP, or Neuro-Linguistic Programming, The Structure of Magic from 1975, by Richard Bandler, he essentially shows, which I think it's like two different authors. Yeah, John Grinder. But he essentially shows, without even needing to mention or utilize gematria, that language and speech patterns are structured and organized largely according to attitude, perception, or perspective. And that by readjusting the way questions are asked, statements made, and choices deduced, essentially the framing, the entire nature and outcome of a situation may be dramatically changed. This also relates to the premise of Dark Doorway of the Beast from 1992. In that both attempt to give insights on how to recalibrate the circumstances of a situation to provide a greater modicum of control for the magician. In his chapter on creative gematria and outer gateways, Kenneth Grant discusses how English gematria is a subsidiary or confirmatory method of analysis, and having been analyzed thus extensively, we can see that his statements are very insightful. Here, it may not be inappropriate to say a few words about an English Kabbalah suggested by verse 55 of the second chapter of AL, or the Book of the Law. Thou shalt obtain the order and value of the English alphabet. Thou shalt find new symbols to attribute them unto. The hybrid nature of any such construction should be evident, because the numerical values of English words can form only subsidiary or confirmatory gematria. This is so because English words are so far removed from the magical roots of language. Their often arbitrary structures can yield only a distorted, at best a bastard Kabbalah. To begin with, the vowels are a stumbling block. They are aids to pronunciation, yet some Kabbalists today accord them Kabbalistic values, as A with Aleph, E with He, I with Yod, O with Ayin, U with Vav, or vowel. In the Chaldean and Hebrew tongues, these are not vowels, vowels being later phonetic devices denoted by points, not by letters. It is evident that to treat them as consonants is to alter the numerical values of the words in question. It is not stated in AL that the order and value of the English alphabet shall constitute a new Kabbalah. The verse merely states that the order and value shall be assumed to new symbols. Austin Spare evolved such a system. He called it the alphabet of desire, or the alphabet of sentient symbols. See Images and Oracles of Austin Osman Spare. It is because I have occasionally applied to English words principles which are, strictly speaking, applicable only to words of Chaldean, Hebrew, or Greek provenance, that these remarks are considered necessary. Such exceptions are justified only by a need for Kabbalistic emphasis and confirmation. That a so-called English Kabbalah is on the way to becoming de rigueur calls for strong protest, although I would not suggest that some form of it is not permissible and in certain cases useful, but its use should at all times subserve the basic magical Kabbalias from which arise the genuine insights. And this it does, and more, for numerous times have I learned something not known by even the greatest of Kabbalists, from the insights following my own investigations using cross-examinations, transliterations, and clear numerical correlations using primarily both Hebrew and English combined. For example, apply Hebrew to English, being 666, essentially constituting the Tikkun Olam, or the repair of the world. The whole Kabbalah of 9 chambers, as well as each numerical degree between them, also follow logical patterns regardless of whether English vowels are considered such in Hebrew and aside from conjecture about magical roots. The fact the Necronomicon mythos has no legitimate magical roots but still happens to convey many unique parallels with the work of Crowley and the Typhonian tradition, which its creator had no knowledge, shows in its own way how the shell of something may become invested with enough life and energy that it becomes real enough. This is, in essence, the nature of most of our societies and institutions in general, and most assuredly in the case of minted money, which only has value insofar as we ourselves value it. Even though the love of it were to be said the root of all evil, it is necessary to have for just about every move made, and thus is every move made in the shadow thereof. One must thus learn to live in the shadows and work with the demons, as essentially demons are merely those which are not complete, but fractured, broken, or inchoate, and it is these, as it were, cliphothic, that is to say, other or outer forces, which he is to magically manipulate through fractal resonance of that being within. At the level of Tiferet, the heart, one is able to reach beyond the 90-degree angle perpendicular to all other 90-degree angles within the three-dimensional field of XYZ, wherein time is uncoiled and the face of the solar angel is made clear. The object of reaching through the gates of Malkuth is to bring through new gnosis, wisdom, or forces from beyond. Therefore, to open a gate, a circle of 360 crossed in 4 90-degree sections with a fifth angle, invisible and opening within and without through the final hay, or window of the Akasha, needs to be effected with a cone of power. See the notes on the sign of protection in Appendix 2 of the Ninth Arch, and the formula of the cone or funnel and dark doorway of the beast. Both final hay and the Akasha equals 107, the number of Biksa, the Hebrew word for egg, the magic egg of generation of both Ulam, consciousness, and therefore identity, and Ananda, bliss. 107 is also the formula of Naga Maya, the serpent language of Mu and the Mayans. See page 312 of The Lost Continent of Mu, as well as the regeneration of this ageless wisdom in the egg of the new Mu. The combination of Mayat and her dark counterpart Mayut also total 107, which is also the Greek Meden, 0, which essentially connects with mu, because the Japanese word for the void or zero is also mu. The dual truth that is equal to the feather of Mayat, and the portal through which flow the kalas or energy specters from beyond. Kenneth Grant notes that Michael Bertaux concept of the meon, or the opposite of ontology or being, the realm of nothingness, also called universe B, relates to the ma-ion. The meon relates to the ma-ion of Frater Akkad, as well as the mu-aeon, 177, which is equated with the Gan Eden, or Garden of Eden, the state of perfection, or the perfect ion symbolized by the egg, or O. Note O equals 70, also being, essentially ontology, plus 107 is 177, the egg of lamb. All of these concepts relate and come to an apex in the egg, which I haphazardly and unknowingly of its significance at the time, obtained on April 2nd, 2011, on what was to be the 107th year of the Aeon of Horus, the day which Akkad formulated Ma-ion from the verses in Liber AL chapter 1 verse 1 and 66, the ends of the chapter of Nuit, which was his birthday, as well as the day in the Call of Cthulhu in 1926 in which R'lyeh sank, harking to the idea of the sinking of Mu in Lemuria, the book on which was published by James Churchward in the same year, and in which Akkad at the time formulated the word alalia, meaning not talking or speechless, or as if wordless, as a new word for the grade of magus or master, being numbered at 103, 10 degrees more than 93. The traditional Masonic value of Vav, Yod, Aleph, Ayin, Vav, as well as Jabulon, Mabon, or Mahabane, combining mother and son, etc., and containing both the egg and the one, or Akkad, as 13, warding the egg, symbolic of the egg and the serpent, or ovum and sperm. Note, Cthulhu, being 69, also equates with the spelling of Baphomet. The comments on verse 69 of Liber Akbish are here highly relevant. 69.2, which I mentioned in the last post, because essentially 96 and 69, 96 is also XV, connecting also to the devil card, essentially. The sign will be known when the 13th. We can but speculate as to the nature of the 13th gateway. The verse number is, by tarot, the number of the path of the magician, to which the letter Beth is attributed. The hieroglyphic house is the Kamite Buti, a euphemism for the vagina. The account of the children of Isis and the birth of the beetle from the loins of Isis should be recalled in connection with the 13th gateway, which may lead to the house of the spider. A contemporary hoaxer claimed to have discovered a 13th zodiacal sign in Arachne rising, essentially, and attribute it to Arachne the spider. As in some other cases, the hoaxer proved the old adage that many a true word is spoken in jest. Blavatsky, Crowley, Dali, etc. played the clown and all broke into the womb or house of initiation by a process of deliberate hoaxing, or hexing. 12 is the number of the house of the magician whose lies turn out to be true. The oracle is, by Greek Kabbalah, equivalent to the Chaldean Gavni, painted with colors, hence Gyne, woman. Painted with colors is not indicative merely of cosmetic adornment, but of her natural chromatic changes of complexion in the scale of her 13-fold lunar phase, where the emission of colors or kalas announces specific qualities of her magical potential. 69 also equals Dine, the vortex of the solar system, which equates with Absu, the abyss, the cosmic kala-spouting vagina. By metathesis, Absu becomes Abus, a manger, a stable, an enclosure. the manger wherein the magical child was born to become eventually the victim of a bloody sacrifice which linked in human consciousness the microcosm and the macrocosm. It is significant that the word child also equals 69. And I think that's with a cough for C. 23 times 3, indicating the formula of the hanged man, brought into direct relationship with the sphere of Maat, whose word, ipsos, is attributable to the 23rd path. Furthermore, 69 equals 23 plus 46, a formula of viparita, or reversion of the senses, allied to the mother goddess in her avatar of Mu, the vulture which, in its mortuary feast, absorbs the light of the world and excretes it in the house or web of the spider. 69 is the elixir of solar and lunar juices, and combines the solar phallic Teth, 9, with Samek, which in the tarot is temperance or art, the alchemical fusion of fire and water, or Sol and Luna. Adam and Eve partaking of the fruit of knowledge which caused them to become aware of their nakedness is perhaps a conveyance of sexual gnosis. Note, Ha-Adam, man, and Eve, essentially Adam and Eve, which I've mentioned in the last post being 64, the reflection of 46, when you add the is 69. The Kabbalah itself has often been said to be the forbidden knowledge of the tree of life itself, which is known could make man as God, or make man and woman like God. As yet another incidental confirmation, I found the 69 formula spelled out as 666 as well. 666 being the primary key of the occult gnosis of mankind and his stellar heritage. 369 is 69 with Shin, both fire and spirit, and is the value of spirit as well as Chasmodai, is essentially Asmodeus. The spirit of the moon, and Sophia, relating essentially also to the Soph or limitless of Ein Sof, the goddess of wisdom. 369 is one less than 370, the value of the Hebrew Osh, or creation, and 9 more than that of the circle, signifying the spiral force of spiritual fire manifesting in the eye of all. Sophia relates to Athena, essentially Pallas, and therefore Baphomet, whose name means baptism of wisdom. And note that Pallas equals 202, another variation of Baphomet. See page 145 of the Ninth Arch, where Kenneth Grant refers to it. And according to a certain Atbash cipher, some have found Sophia to reflect Baphomet. See also the older tarot card, particularly the Rider-Waite version, where man and woman are set apart and chained to the ring of the devil. And note that 69 inverted as 96 is again Etzvi, the number of the card of the beast. And the beast spelled out as 96. I guess I meant to add another R, but these are merely ruminations, but they are merely additions and deeper insights into those I have found in these various books quoted. These values are better understood if further context is gained from the books themselves and the periods from which they come. Mu conceals the 23 plus 23 genetic lineage of man, and 69, Cthulhu or Baphomet, implies the third line of Cain, also 69. Introduced through the Qliphothic descent of primordial creation into the Sitra Ara, or other side comprising the broken shells. 69 is the 50, denoting the 50 seals of the names of Marduk in the Necronomicon. And in the Sumerian myth, Marduk conquers the dragon Tiamat. And a spelling of Tiamat also avails 69, from whose blood was generated man. The number 69 seems to crop up in many ways relating to these seemingly disparate ideas, as each has the propensity to do in their own unique ways when you consider them thoroughly. In Hecate's Fountain from 1992, Grant notes 69 further, saying, "After these verses comes the declaration, there is success, written against the number 69, which denotes the magical formula to be employed for ensuring it. It is, in effect, a part of the Mass of Maat. See Outside the Circles of Time, chapter 16. And it bears a direct relationship to the ordeals. 69 is 23 plus 46, an equation which embodies the formulae of the path of Ipsos and the vulture of Maat, in relation to the mortuary feast, symbolic of the full accomplishment of the Mass. That is to say that the vulture, mu, is to eat the blood, mem, path 23, as in the Mass of the Phoenix, which is, however, singular, while the one here referred includes the combined elixir. The hawk-headed Lord of Silence is no longer Horus, the embodiment of force and fire, but Set. He declares to the twin warriors about the pillars of the world that their time is nigh at hand. The twins are Horus and Set as Rahur Kuit and Hur Par Krat, and 71, the verse number, is the number of Lamb. This suggests that Lamb has been invoked to complete or fulfill the work set afoot by Aiwass at the beginning of the book. Lamb is the Lord of the double wand of power, the wand of the force of Kafnia. But his left hand is empty, for he has crushed an universe and naught remains. And in chapter 16 of Outside the Circles of Time, 1980, Grant says, considerations of the technical degrees of sexual magic used in the OTO will show how the Mass of Maat is comprehended by the scheme of the one beyond, i.e. the one beyond 10, the 11th degree. The one beyond the 10th Sephiroth is the one beyond the system of power zones which constitutes the known universe. The one beyond 10 is Doth, the 11th power zone that is the gateway to the other side. We are thereby lifted out of the category of the known universe A and translated into the unknown universe B, where exists the factor infinite and unknown, viz. The Aeon of Maat, the daughter darkness. Dark, that is, to those whose vision is confined to the hither side of the tree. Hence the association between Ma-Ion 107, the final Hay of the daughter formula of death and rebirth via the doorway of Doth symbolized by the egg of manifestation. 11 being egg or Hay Gimel Gimel, 5 plus 3 plus 3, and thus 1 through 11 being 66 as the great work of Had and Nu, 10 plus 56, the ends of manifestation. This egg manifested physically on April 2nd, 2011, and has been a great tool for its primary purpose, that of scrying and acting as beacon and lens, or window, for transmundane forces, owning up to its original given name, the Egg of Mu. The 9th degree OTO is therefore the door to the infinite. It opens on to a completely new series, a totally different dimension of consciousness. In terms of Tetragrammaton, the degrees of the sovereign sanctuary of the OTO may be classified as follows. The 8th degree involves the Yod, the 9th degree involves the He, the 10th degree involves the Vav, as the Hierophantic or administrative degree. The 11th degree involves the He final, the daughter that reifies the entire formula on another plane or in another dimension. The 11th degree therefore initiates a totally new series of worlds having their roots, as it were, in the known universe, and passing from thence, via secret pathways, to the unknown, by means of the formula of reversal, from 9 degree to 11th degree, a leap from Yasod to Doth via the sun Vav to the daughter He via the mother moon, to the priestess via the Aerophant. The eye of the daughter, Kafnia, is the door to the unknown universe, and it is opened by the secret key of the 11th degree. In Liber AL, Kafnia is mentioned in the same verse as the Lord of the Double Wand, who is the dual Shaitan. Kafnia would then correspond itself with the final He, which opens as the gateway to the future, and therefore future incarnations, or more aptly, the between states outside the circles of time, being the invisible pylon opening beyond the present fractional instant of reality, which is but a fragment and fraction of the true reality, i.e., the eon of Mayat, or the eon of truth and justice. Note also that Kafnia plus Mayat is 666, and Kafnia, being 224, equals Nephthys, another form of the daughter. And 224 also relates to the year of Venus. And here, talking about 95, he ends up saying that, because Dakini is 95, he says, the serial number 95 of verse 48 of the Wisdom of Silva is that of Dakini. These are demoniacal female entities hostile to humanity. They are haunters of graveyards, which implicates the necromantic formula already discussed. The Dakini appear as do the Euphonauts in human or non-human guises. 95 is the number of Haman, the planet Venus, traditionally associated with the Great Old Ones. But as George Adamski in the Untold Story, has hinted, the planet itself is but a symbol for influences from outside. It is well to bear in mind, in connection with cosmic cataclysms, that 95 indicates the waking world. And that's right, Liber 95 is the wake world, which I believe is in Consom Pax. The implication being that these catastrophes are confined to the states of duality. They do not involve the states of formless consciousness beyond. So again, Lemuria comes to mind, or Mu, as well. The light higher than eyesight and purple beyond purple refer to that which is beyond the visible spectrum and over the rainbow, of the Ruach in the abyss of Doth. So again, that this whole like blue and purple beyond purple refer to that which is beyond the visible spectrum and over the rainbow of the Ruach in the abyss of Doth, which acts as the factor of division in space-time, and thus the gate of manifestation into our known reality or universe A. So, again, connecting to Chesed and Yesod as the beginning and end, essentially, of the Ruach, there's definitely something to those colors and their correspond. Like, I don't know. It's definitely they're openings. But note, Kaf is the 11th letter. Nia is the inversion of Ain, nothing. Therefore, the formula Kaf Nia veils the reflection of not, universe B, into being, relating to the formula of Lemal. This is confirmed on page 153 of Outside the Circles of Time. The back of the page bearing Lamb's portrait of essentially the equinox, the blue equinox, is page 311, which is one of the numbers of Kaf Nia, a mysterious term mentioned in AL which has been investigated extensively in Night Side of Eden. There is therefore a strong, if oblique, connection between Lamb, the Talam, and the daughter, Kaf, whose secret eye, or Nia, is the gateway to Universe B in the back of the Tree of Life. Blavatsky in The Secret Doctrine, Volume 3, draws attention to a passage in Ralston Skinner's The Source of Measures, in which the letter P is shown as referring to the half of the head behind the ears. This part of the body is more usually ascribed to Kaf or Kaf, see? The daughter is thereby equated with the Pe or mouth, not of the face, but of the back of the head. And it just brings the connection of Kaf and Golgotha, essentially. Like Pe and Golgotha and Kaf are all connected in the tower symbolism. If this symbolism is applied to the mystical mouth, the mode of entry into Universe B becomes plain. The backwards mouth is obviously related to the backwards word of the vulture, Mu, and Ma, being the tower, is also an obvious relation to Pe, the mouth, as well as via its tarot attribution. The connection between Mu, Lamb, the Tower, and Kophnia are all related to the reception, which Liber AL was, and the word Kabbalah itself means, and the oracular faculty known as Bath Kol, or Best Kol. Gone through extensively in the Kabbalahs of Best Kol and outside the circles of time. Lamb 71 also equates with Yavne, or Yad Vav Nun He, a dove. This recalls AL chapter 1 verse 57, there is the dove and there is the serpent, choose ye well. He, as in he or he, the daughter-mother or mother-daughter letter, my prophet hath chosen, knowing the law of the fortress and the great mystery of the house of God, i.e. Pe, the tower, also originally called the house of God. All these old letters of my book are aright, but Zadi is not the star. This also is secret. Note that the dove and the serpent appear as feminine totems, and that he, my prophet, could be read as He, i.e. the star. For she is prophetic in the sense that Lamb is the voice of the silence, as well as being the image of nothingness, or Negwal. Thus, the Bath Kol, or divine Vok or Vox of the daughter, is the living mouth of the tower, which is the pylon of Ipsos Lamb. The tower reared in the desert of Set, wherein Nuit bids her devotees to invoke her. Invoke me under my stars, i.e. Kalas. AL 157. In the heart of the Master, it is said that the voice of the word of the dove is Hrilyu, the shrill scream of ecstasy occurring at the climax of the creative act. It occurs against the background hiss of the swan, which is the Kabbalist equivalent of Ipsos Lamb, or 767. And here it is necessary to note a curious point. If the two S's be abstracted from Ipsos, Ippo or IPO remains. This is a word meaning to shine forth. It derives from the Egyptian word Af, or AF, a name of the sun in the lower hemisphere. SS, as in the silver star, is the star Sirius, the sun behind the sun. The number of IPO is 160, which is the number of tonal, or tonal, the world of phenomena in Castaneda's system. The Negwal is to the tonal what Sirius is to the sun in the lower hemisphere. This brings to bear a direct beam of influence from Sirius to Earth, from Negwal to tonal, via the pylon of Ipsos Lamb. It is possible to define these in-betweenness concepts by means of the Kabbalah of Beskul and other dark grimoires. For we are now in spaces outside thought or dualism and its expression in ordinary terms. Crowley remarked in the Book of Thoth that constant meditation on the symbolic contraries embedded in the imagery of the Atus, or trumps essentially, will eventually engender a new faculty of consciousness that enables the individual mind to apprehend that which is beyond human logic and understanding. But it is necessary constantly to penetrate these spaces, first mentally and then etherically, before one can grasp the extremely tenuous and evanescent wraiths of the realities they contain. These considerations apply even more emphatically to the OTO Horus Mea Ipsos network, wherein the candidates for initiation enter totally new spaces, not spaces which have until that time been sealed off or closed like long disused galleries thick with the dust of eons, but spaces that do not exist before the will formulates a resolve to enter them and to align the mind and the heart with the 93 current. Austin Spare referred to making the correct alignments, and Carlos Castaneda to Gorda's lines of force in the second ring of power. The means of traveling through these spaces beyond the sun in the lower hemisphere, i.e. the tonal, is the Meatet boat, the eon of Meat which leads beyond Horus to the sun behind the sun, i.e. Sirius or Sothis, reified by the ritual hissing back of all creation. Note that 767, ipsos lam, is the number of the word swan, which is the bird symbolic of the background hiss. The Meatet boat, or inner spacecraft, is the new eon or Aquarian space bark that saves from the waters of space, as Noah's Ark saved from the deluge on Earth. Note the nautical terms: ship of the desert, gimel, a camel, the symbolic mode of crossing the abyss. The letter gimel is attributed to the high priestess and to the path that crosses the abyss. See Tree of Life. The Meatet boat, or spaceship, Noah's or Nu's ark, and the womb or ark, cf. ark in the figure of Nuit arched over the earth and shedding her kalas, or starlight, of Nu Isis and of Nu Mayat. The Kabbalistic formula of Nu Mayat space is 107. This is Lam 71 in reverse, or 17, with the void 0 at its heart, which is 56 plus 51 and a number of Mani O and of Ma Ion. 107 is also the number of Kaba, or Kaf Beth He, the genitalia muliebra, a pleasure chamber, vault of heaven, the primitive type of the Kaba, the feminine abode. The root of Kaba, QB, Kaf Beth, means a hollow vessel or cup from the Egyptian word Kaba, vase of the libation. Its number 102, which is that of Lamal, or Lamal, a palindrome that reveals the true nature of the cult of Lam as the transmitter to Al, or universe A, of or from La, universe B, via Ma, the daughter. 102 is also the number of Laban Avaz, or the ostrich, the bird of Mayat. 107 is also the number of oval, which is half of the word repstoval, or rpstoval, a mysterious cryptogram in Liber AL that is kabbalistically identical with the word of the eon of Mayat, ipsos. The Mani O is the stone of manifestation. Thus, 107 links the stone, or the Kaaba, and Bixa, an egg, the latter symbol being of importance to Crowley during the Amalantra workings, which was originally Liber 97, which terminated abruptly with this symbol as if the gap were the hiatus or void, the Nigwal, between the two eons of Horus and of Mayat. Ma Ion 107 refers more precisely to the eon of the daughter. The Kaf, or Kafnia, in the oval or egg may imply the capsule in which the daughter star makes its safe passage from one star system to another through the tunnels outside the circles of time. As again, the originators, Kali, Nuit, Nu Isis, etc., or progenitors, I mean. These concepts are rather technical and complex, having come from various sources and combined via either their numerical or otherwise symbolic connection. I myself had a difficult time understanding how the concepts of Mu, Mayat, and the Ma-Ion linked together at first, and have still only but glossed over some primary points that have emerged in through reading the books on Mu, and attempting to relate them to Crowley, Akkad, and Grant's theories, with which I am familiar. I consider this by no means exhaustive, but merely as a basis upon which to base further references and details which are likely to become apparent and written about in future posts. And I quoted these pages from The Lost Continent of Mu. Originally, the universe was only a soul or spirit. Everything was without life, calm, silent, soundless. Void and dark was the immensity of space. Only the Supreme Spirit, the great self-existing power, the Creator, the seven-headed serpent, moved within the abyss of darkness. Then desire came to him to create worlds, and he created worlds. And the desire came to him to create the earth with living beings upon it, and he created the earth and all therein. And this is the manner of creation of the earth with all the living beings upon it. The 7 superlative intellects of the 7-headed serpent gave 7 commands. I shall use the Nekal esoteric meanings as they are most intelligible to the reader. The Demotic are all symbolic and not easily understood. The first intellectual command was, "Let the gases which are without form and scattered through space be brought together, and out of them let the earth be formed." The gases then assembled themselves into the form of a whirling mass. The second command was, "Let the gases solidify to form the earth." Then the gases solidified. Volumes were left on the outside, out of which water and the atmosphere were to be formed, and volumes were enveloped within the new world. Darkness prevailed and there was no sound, for as yet neither the atmosphere nor the waters were formed. The third command was, "Let the outside gases be separated and let them form the atmosphere and the waters." And the gases were separated. One part went to form the waters, and the waters settled upon the earth and covered its face, so that no land anywhere appeared. The gases that did not form the waters formed the atmosphere, and the light was contained in the atmosphere. And the shafts of the sun met the shafts of the light in the atmosphere and gave birth to light. Then there was light upon the face of the earth. And figure 4. The heat was also contained in the atmosphere. And the shafts of the sun met the shafts of the heat in the atmosphere and gave it life. Then there was heat to warm the face of the earth. Figure 5. The fourth command was, "Let the gases that are within the earth raise the land above the face of the waters." Then the fires of the under earth lifted the land on which the waters rested until it appeared above the face of the waters, and this was the dry land. The fifth command was, "Let life come forth in the waters." And the shafts of the sun met the shafts of the earth in the mud of the waters, and there formed cosmic eggs, or life germs, out of the particles of the mud. Out of these cosmic eggs came forth life as commanded. Figure 6b. The sixth command was, "Let life come forth upon the land." And the shafts of the sun met with the shafts of the earth in the dust of the land, and out of it formed cosmic eggs. And from these cosmic eggs life came forth upon the earth as was commanded. Figure 6c. And when all this was done, the seventh intellect said, "Let us make man after our own image, and let us endow him with powers to rule this earth." Then Narayana, the 7-headed intellect, the creator of all things throughout the universe, created man and placed within his body a living imperishable spirit, and man became like Narayana in intellectual power. Then was creation complete. The 7 commands are, without doubt, also indicative of 7 periods of time. A period of time is not measured by any particular number of years. It may mean a day, a year, or millions of years. Thus, these tablets do not assign any particular length of time to creation. It may have taken millions or tens of millions of years to accomplish what was recorded in the tablets. It is merely stated that the earth was created in 7 periods of time, not in 7 days, as recorded in the biblical legend. The general resemblance of the opening part of the Nekal record as regards the story of the creation to the account as found in the Bible is remarkable, and it is also remarkable how great the divergences thereafter. Legends of the creation are prevalent among peoples throughout the world. And real quick, it just occurred to me that legend is 97. Legends of the creation are prevalent among people throughout the world, and in all instances I have found so much of the material identical that the only conclusion to be drawn is that they are of common origin and their genesis was in Mu. The 7th command was the hardest of all to translate. The actual deciphering was easy, but we found it impossible to find modern words that would convey identically the same meaning as the ancient. For instance, soul or spirit were the nearest words we could find to represent what was put into the body of man. The word living may or may not be exactly what was intended in the original. The word imperishable is, without doubt, absolutely correct. But what does the phrase after our own fashion actually mean? Certainly not in our own image. It in some way refers to the mentality and mystic powers, and this is substantiated by the words, endow him with powers to rule the earth. The Bible uses a good symbolical example when it refers to the breath of God. At any rate, it is clear that the meaning is special powers received from God, and may therefore be looked upon as a part of God, as a leaf is a part of the tree. Man came from God and must return whence he came. So while having wrote that, I realized it doesn't really actually go too much into the meanings of Lam and Mu, which I may have done it before, like looked through the glossaries, which each entry, some of his early of the Typhonian trilogies don't have entries that the later ones do, but they're always at least a little different, and he has different sort of origins in different ones. Like Creole is in Cults of the Shadow, and Aleister Crowley in the Hidden God, while not really in the later ones. And then there's Voodoo, which would be, well, I mean, that's African or Creole, but either way, one thing I had noticed was this mention of Adris, which I ended up happening to scroll through and found where it was mentioned right here. Magical pressing stones by which oracles are extracted from primordial space. But it's not in the index, so it was like a happenstance I chanced upon it. But in the glossary, I had never noticed this, but he says, Adris, magical stones sensitive to the approach of spirits, e.g., the crystal, which responds to the presence of alien entities. And I had to look it up because I'd never even really heard that word. But Jan Gonda mentions it in relation to essentially the Vajra, but it means stone. Here he links it to the cloud, of course, the lightning's thunderstone, essentially. Here it says a mountain, but ultimately Adri represents the number 7. Here it means Sphatika Adri, quartz stone. Accordingly, verse 3:17 through 23, while describing a meditation on Amritesha in his form as Mrityujit. And so now, having constructed the Amrita Mudra or the Padma Mudra, the Mantrin should meditate on the Atman. The deity is equal in splendor to that of 10 million moons, as bright as pellucid pearls, and as magnificent as quartz stone. Sphatika Adri Samaprabha. He resembles drop of cow's milk or jasmine, mountain snow, and is everywhere. Adri is also 7. I found that interesting. I always say that, but I found that cool. Just again, tying back to the last post of the crystal energy device. Just without looking for it, it connects. But really, I really don't know how far back. Well, like Lam first appears in the Magical Revival, but there's not an entry in the glossary. I don't think there's one in Cults of the Shadow. No, but he does have all these different sort of interesting things that connect to Lam and show how Lam is really a marma or a crossroads for many different subjects. And the way he links it to the Lambikagra chakra. And actually, he gives all these different dates. For example, in this Night Side of Eden, he says Lam, an extraterrestrial entity with whom Crowley established contact circa 1919, even though it's 18, and which in more recent years has been contacted by Soror Tenith of the OTO and by Michael Berteau of the Black Snake Cult, or Coulevoir Noir, La Coulevoir Noir. A reproduction of Crowley's Portrait of Lamb appears in The Magical Revival. And then back this way. Here he says 1919. In another book, I think it's possibly, I don't remember exactly, but he says 1915, and he corrects it eventually in the Ninth Arch. But here he says, an extraterrestrial entity with whom contact was established by Crowley circa 1919. Since that time, various members of the OTO have had magical intercourse with Lam. Lam, or Lam, is a link between the star systems of Sirius and Andromeda. And then Lemal, a palindrome that reveals the true nature of the cult of Lam as transmitter to AL, Universe A, of or from LA, Universe B, via Ma, the daughter. In Lambika Yoga, a form of union, or yoga, via the higher Kunalinktis, a tantric practice employed to extract the kalas of the goddess. And Lambika Yoga, it ties into this connecting chakra between the Ajna and the Vishuddha. Here he says, Lam, the way, a loaded term for Typhonians, for it is also the name of an extraterrestrial entity with whom Aleister Crowley established contact while in America in 1915. And he was in America in 1915, but it wasn't until 1918, essentially, that he drew the portrait, according to all other accounts. Lam's cult is fast becoming a focus for those interested in the occult implications of ufology and intra-dimensional psionics. And he associates it, or he calls him the Lama of Lang, more so in the Ninth Arch, but the name of the abominable plateau, which has been identified by some writers with a region in Central Asia. In a magical sense, Lang is identical with certain dimensions of the Mauve Zone. Lam is the Lama of Lang. There are veiled references to him in the writings of Chambers, Lovecraft, Derleth, and others. And Chambers would be the king in yellow, Hastur, who's associated with like a cosmic wind. And that's where he also associates him with the Kamsin wind, which the Kamsin wind is also, again, the ever present 666. But what else was I going to say? It makes me think of how in the beginning of this he mentions Agartha, how Lang being a plateau, it's kind of a counterpart to the underground city. He says its number is 220, the number of verses or cells in the Book of the Law, also which Crowley linked to the numeration of Nephilim. It comprehends the tunnels of Set, the cells of the Clavat, and the secret network of Nadis, which lace the occult anatomy of the astral universe. Materialists claim for Agartha a physical location beneath the Gobi Desert and similar places. And it's interesting, here I see Bindu. Bindu is associated with the Ajna as well. And when you look into it, there's like this sort of research article that goes into the chakras and the different aspects of essentially the Ajna and Bindu. But Lambika itself translates as tongue, which can refer or mean the soft palate or uvula, representing one of the 16 vital centers of the body, according to the Jyotsna 373. In Hatha Yoga, Adara refers to vital point of the body, seat of vital function. Jyotsna refers, or verse 373, cites a passage attributed to Guraksha listing the Adaras as Lambika, tongue, etc. But Lambika Chakra is the name of the wheel or chakra associated with Odhyana, one of the sacred seats, or Pitha, according to the Manthana Bhairava Tantra. So yeah, it essentially refers to, again, this tongue, this concept of not just clicking, but flicking the tongue, or a sort of extraction, essentially. And he says of the sort of Amrit or nectar of the Sahasrara, Where is it? Oops, L. Here he says, he gives a bigger definition for Lam, but Lambika Chakra, a power zone at the back of the head which connects specific nadis with the Vishuddha Chakra and the tongue in the process of extracting the nectar flow, Amrit, from the Sahasrara Chakra. Lambika, a form of Laya Yoga, concerned primarily with occult centers in the head and brain. Here he links Lam and Iwas, essentially, literally the way of Iwas, more correctly, of Ivaz. Lam, literally the way, the path, tunnel, or passageway. So essentially, he's more than just an entity in itself. It's a sort of experience. But Lam is also the name of an alien entity who led from Sirius the second invasion of Earth around 12,000 years ago. Lam and company landed on the plateau of Lang in southeast China on the borders of Tibet and were all but exterminated by terrestrials. With a few survivors, Lam penetrated to the land of the dragon, Bhutan, where they established their cult in mountain fastnesses. Their descendants became known in the Buddhist era as the Dropas or Zopas, variously Drukpas or Drugpas. Those who follow the way, Lam, of the dragon. Some claim their provenance to have been the star Gamma Draconis. Crowley encountered Lam during a magical working in the USA in 1918 when he broke off an ongoing seance with the wizard Amalantra in order to sketch the entity. It is probably the first drawing from life of a praetor-human intelligence. See Magical Revival, Plate 5. And here, Dropa, variously Zopa, synonymous with the Tibetan Drukpa or Drugpa, whose alien ancestors they were. The Drukpas were votaries of the dragon cult of Tibet, Sikkim, and Bhutan. And I think it's actually Hecate's fountain, but here he says, in Drukpa, Dugpa, or Dropa, literally sect or cult of the thunder dragon. It was brought to Earth via Lam 12,000 years ago when it was established on the plateau of Lang, situated between China and Tibet. Modern descendants of the Drukpas yet flourish in Bhutan. See bibliography under John Levy. And when you go to John Levy, you see The Nature of Man According to the Vedanta, as well as Tibetan Buddhist Rites from the Monasteries of Bhutan, Volume 1, Rituals of the Drukpa Order, Volume 2, Sacred Dances and Rituals of the Nying Mappa, and Drukpa Orders, Volume 3, Temple Rituals and Public Ceremonies. Recorded in Bhutan in 1971 by John Levy. Lyricord Discs, New York, with explanatory booklet. And I actually found the first 2 volumes, I guess, and it's literally a 2-hour and 23-minute recording of different sounds, I guess, of their ritual proceedings. But essentially, he links this knowledge with essentially these different concepts that came to him from different sources, essentially, whether it be Crowley, or in some cases, some of these things were pointed at through some of the concepts and how they linked in his mind. They came through different sources like Nima and other like channelers of the Book of Liber Akbish, the Book of the Spider, and the Wisdom of Shilba, which he himself channeled or just wrote down, whatever. But I think it's important to consider essentially Lam and what he's linking it to with these, like the chakras and the different pranayamas and yogas to accelerate or exacerbate what he's talking about. It didn't occur to me till afterwards that how I mentioned Ma, how that is the reversal of the Bija mantra of the Vishuddha, as Ham. Ham means, Ham is the Bija mantra for Akasha, and it means to go, expressive of warmth or respect, an interjection of wrath. But it also is essentially when reversed as Ma, which Kenneth Grant relates to the tower, has many other connections. It means to increase, essentially relates to Maha, which means great, but also connects to Magus, essentially, and pretty much the idea, possibly the root of Maya, relating essentially to the earth. But Maha, also backwards, is Aham, which is essentially the ego or the I, but also essentially relates to the Ruach. And so, in the Ahamkara ego. So, I don't know. It's like weird how these different concepts in different languages cluster, reflect, and point to certain things essentially that need to be grasped. When you look into the index, though, of Lam, there's so many, and then also Mu and Ma-ion and Mu-aeon. But essentially, what they seem to relate to are, like he even says, the Mu-aeon is a potential eon or future development based on how the current goes, essentially, or how time unfolds, and based on choices and the will and whatnot. And like it took me a while to grasp what he was referring to with Ma-ion, as well as really new Isis. And it's difficult, like you could try to just summarize it and make it simplified. But what I think they have to do with are the sort of the fecundity of Earth is what new Isis relates to. The children of Isis seem to relate to future incarnations. When he talks about the radiance of new Isis, see the star spawn of new Isis. Lambikagra chakra, this chakra situated in the brain between Ajna and Vishuddha, is associated with the Bija mantra Lam. Again, the mantra of Muladhara. Muladhara, Malkuth. There's this reflective nature. Kuth relating to the Koth, which is the sort of hollow pillar that he said relates to really the Mav zone, but the region between waking and dreaming. This chakra is the power zone, stimulation of which facilitates traffic with the outer ones. And that gets into the whole concept of the outer ones, the great old ones, and the deep ones, which are essentially like elemental conglomerations or manifestations of forces themselves on micro or macrocosmic levels. Ma-ion, the eon or ion of Ma, the lesser cycle, running concurrently with the eon of Maya until Zain supervenes and the word is lost again, withdrawn into the Ain. This lost word, an unutterable, unspeakable name, etc., these connect in my mind also with the idea of Mu as a sort of submerged, not just continent, but really a lost faculty or a dormant faculty, again pointing toward this whole tongue, Vishuddha and Ajna connection in the Lambika Kagra chakra, which has everything to do with communication, the faculty of not just speech, but communication in particular. It brings to mind the idea of the grays communicating with mainly the mind, as well as this clicking concept. Om is essentially Mu is Om also reversed. Om is lived as the pranava, which displays the vibration of twisted sound culminating in the Chandra Bindu, the perfect yoga or union of sun and moon, Ida and Pingala in the central canal, Sushumna. When stillness reigns there, the way is free for the ascent of the fire snake to the Sahasrara chakra. So it's all over the place. Here he says for ion, an electrified particle. So anyway, I could go back and forth all throughout these and try to get a better grasp of it. I mean, for me, it's slowly synced in and I'm still picking up on it. a tower seen by dreamers on the threshold of sleep, Koth. It is the first pylon before the tunnels of Set. According to Lovecraft, Koth has a sign that dreamers see fixed above the archway of a certain black tower standing alone in the twilight. See the case of Charles Dexter Ward. The daughter aspect of the Tetragrammaton, he ends up also saying, because I tried finding where he mentioned Adri's as this thunderstone essentially. So I went to stone in Hecate's Fountain. Talks about Starstone, and then he talks about the Stone Egg Complex, which is just crazy because of the stone and the egg, and on the April 2nd date of 2011 that I got. Like, that's why I got so interested and felt like I needed to write a blog to examine and like meticulously go over these concepts, since I wasn't able to talk to Kenneth Grant in time about it. Kind of this, I mean, all of his chapters go in so deep, it's hard to know where to begin, except from the beginning, of course. But for simplicity, I just wanted to mention what he talks about regarding these three numbers that he says give a close approximation to the truth, according to Bond and Lay in page 51 of Gematria, 26, 71, and 97, because they're different correlations, essentially the Tetragrammaton, Lam, and he relates the 97 to the Greek, or not Greek, but yeah, Gnostic Tetragrammaton of the Greek Theos, essentially 71 times 4, and then also the Gnostic Tetragrammaton, Iota, Epsilon, Omicron, Upsilon, 485, being 97 times 5, Ben Adam, the Son of Man, the secret fourfold word. But he says this implies an element that transcends the Tetragrammaton of the four directions of space. A.L. chapter 2, verse 49, he quotes, "This is of the four, there is a fifth who is invisible, and therein am I as a babe in an egg." Note again the number 49, 7 times 7, relating to Venus. Crowley makes a point of noting that 49 was a number useful in the calculations of D. It implies that it concerns transmundane matters, etc. So I'm jumping over a lot, but essentially the secret fourfold word of Yad-He-Vav-He, which signifies the four quarters or zadis, the directions, the dimensions of space, essentially. He ends up saying again, 94, the number of the verse as a whole is the sum of the numbers 26, 71, and 97, which have just been examined. We are here dealing with the Maeotian current in its most concentrated form. 194, as the number of the word stone, confirms the stone egg complex of Lam. The overlaps of how many different things from different sources that get referred to by Kenneth Grant, and I don't know, it's mind-boggling to me. Meon, which he relates essentially to Ma-ion, the heavenly habitation, a punning euphemism for the vulva. Again, an entrance to Universe A, or Malkuth. According to Inman, the Beth Baal Meon was a temple of lascivious rites. The connection with the Ma-ion, see Cults of the Shadow, chapter 8, is via the metaphysical meaning of the term Meon, which denotes the habitation of the outer ones, back of the tree of life. It is an expression used by Black Snake cultists to denote Universe B, the reflex of Universe A, the known universe. Meon means a dwelling or habitation. And it kind of makes me think of what he said about the Exacxar, a black stone sometimes called the 60 stone because of its 60 facets, on each of which appears a mystical device or hieroglyphic. According to Silenus, an ancient geographer, Exacxar is associated with an alien race characterized by an aversion to the sun, hissing speech, and a subterrene mode of existence. So again, the night side. And in Night Side of Eden, he mentions the mu ion, a term used by Black Snake cultists to denote the dark doctrine, or the doctrine of the dark side of the tree. And mu ion, a variant spelling of mo aeon, its number, again mo being ohm backwards, its number 177 is that of Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, thus indicating the concern of the dark doctrine with the night side of Eden. And so again, a sort of heavenly habitation or region that is inhabited. Makes me think this woman's womb. The netter sign or acts as a symbol of divinity as a cleaver into two. As such, it was originally a symbol of the mother and her child, the latter being neter or neuter, i.e., neither male nor female, but having the potential of either. The axe as a figure of seven is the symbol also of Set, whose name means seven. This figure of seven was attributed also to Venus, the planetary representative of the primordial mother, whose original form was the thigh constellation in heaven, and the woman's womb upon earth. So again, Venus, which he says Adamski veils, or Venus symbolizes essentially extraterrestrial forces. See, which I'm pretty sure I already mentioned, but Adamski hinted the planet itself is but a symbol for influences from outside. And again, the two moons, the duality, the division of Yesod and Doth. Again, there's a connection between the Ajna and the Vishuddha, but how it also connects to the reproductive doorways of Malkuth. A fact that becomes immediately significant is that of Tifreth's position between the two moons at Yesod and Doth, which are themselves gateways of ingress and of egress to or from the other side. These two moons are one. They represent the dual lunation of the cosmic poles of cosmic consciousness. The Hecate moon in Yesod revealing but the thinnest sliver of the full moon of Doth. The Hecate frog leaper makes its jump from Yesod to Doth behind Tifreth at the place of the black sun. See Night Side of Eden, page 101. It thus accomplishes its invisible flight. This terminates either in the abyss, where it is devoured by Yog-Sothoth, and thereby translated into the universe of the Old Ones, or it pursues an upward path and achieves the ultimate snow, Kether, Hadith, or Kadath in the cold waste. It thereby surpasses Yugoth, Kether, and is dissolved before diffusing beyond the ring pass knot represented by the 6 eggs or eyes of essentially the Ein Sof Or, or the Ein Sof, and Ein Sof Or. The eye of Shiva represents the Ein, the number of which is 70, or really 61, but Nox represents the tunnels of Ein Sof, the number of which is 140. The tunnels appear dark because of the blinding web of light represented by the Ein Sof Or, the number of which is 210. The sum total, 420, has startling affinities with the current of energy just traced up the trunk of the tree. First and foremost, it is the number of Hadit or Set, and by Greek Kabbalah of Isis. It is also the number of the word Nun, Pe, Resh, Zadi, meaning open, to the outside. The latter concept is compatible with the class of entities known as the Yith. See the shadow out of time, which are described as non-human entities of pure mind who migrate across the ages. Their terrestrial power zone is said to be centered in a prehistoric city in the wastes of inner Australia. 420 is also the number of Mormo, the name of a witch who is described as an emissary of Hecate and as accompanied by dead souls. Which, again, Lam was part of a art collection, I guess, or something called the Dead Souls collection. The witch or Mormo appears as Hag. The Hag or Hex is a form of Hecate or Hecate, whereas the Lamia, another form of the Mormo, appear as lovely courtesans. This duplex phenomena is suggested of the Tibetan Kadoma skygoer, the Dakini or fairy of alluring outward form who is depicted with hideous facial expressions, which again he relates when talking about Venus here, who is depicted with hideous facial expressions. Here we have the Hecate moon of Yesod, the horned or new moon of witchcraft, and the Doth moon of the goddess 15, represented by the plenilune. For an explanation of this term, see Cults of the Shadow. Goddess 15 represents the supreme and final Kala in the ancient system of Tantra. Parallels with Tibetan symbolism are persistent. They are emphasized by the fact that Thoth is represented by Herschel, the symbol of which, when turned upon its side, resembles the Thunderbolt of Dorje Chang. The Dorje or Vajra, represented by the diamond, symbolizes the whirling thunderbolt from the skies. This is the symbol of the Drukpas, the draconian cult in Bhutan, of the trident of Shiva, of the triple fire tongue of Set, and also of the three crossroads of Hecate. Furthermore, the concept of dead souls, again, suggests Lamb, whose portrait Crowley included in an exhibition of his artwork in Greenwich Village. So you can see the just various connections he weaves together. They're almost inextricable, but I guess that's where like different people having different personal links can come and try and unravel it. It makes me think of how he describes the Krix core. QRS. The tangled light, a fusion of solar-lunar currents infused by the transplutonic vibrations of New Isis. It is the equivalent of the twisted sound of the Pranava. But he links the Krix core with this like bird that injects some sort of, not necessarily venom, but like a substance into the brain of one of the characters, essentially. And it makes me think of essentially like some sort of like UFO encounter or ufological implicits. But he says the enumeration of Krix core is 666, which I actually found it to be 696. I don't know the spelling he's using, but which equates it with that of Therion the Beast, named after a constellation outside the magical circle of the zodiac, which was invented to keep at bay the invading forces from outside. See Therion and Against the Light. Against the Light is sort of a, despite being fictional, I don't know, he ends up relating a sort of another UFO or alien encounter through the window. And again, the window is symbolic of the daughter, or the final Hay, or Hay itself. But like Cliffa, the beast typifies alien or non-human entity. The number 666 yields 18, the dynamic or ever fresh, i.e., new Isis. Its reflex, 999, yields 27, the pregnant womb. Their total, 18 plus 27, is 45. Adam, red dust, the matter of manifestation, i.e., blood. But again, this tangled light makes me think of the orb that I saw and how it. I've seen other people's descriptions of their sightings of orbs, and yeah, there's some sort of tangled light or tendrils that are contained in a sphere, and that's what comes to mind. But again, reading some of these different perspectives, I guess, especially the not just Sri Yantra, what is it, the Sri Vidya concepts, I think get like you can get a closer approach to understanding these through these modalities that I think the current ufology disclosure people don't want people to find out about. There's just different reasons. And yet then the occultists don't want you to link the technological and ufological side. But anyway, this fifth element of the Tetragrammaton is what Ma-Ion makes me think of, and how the Akasha and all these different connections, essentially, Kenneth Grant says that he's trying to essentially elucidate a grimoire in these books, a sort of unwritten grimoire. And in a sense, he calls it the grimoire, the Grant grimoire. But when correctly vibrated, it impregnates with visions and with oracles the daughter or virgin priestess in her state of virginity or unawakedness, i.e., magnetic sleep, from whence flow tantra and other kinds of transmissions. And then, real quick, he says, in the Ninth Arch's glossary of New Isis, the transplutonic power zone and gateway to the Mauve Zone. New Isis was the name of a magical lodge that formed a cell of the OTO between the years 1955 and 62. And that's also why some of this is important, is because none of these concepts that have kind of slapped people silly for the last many decades, I think Crowley, despite being, whether you want to say blamed or given the credit for some of the ufological manifestations since 1947, I think that's part of it. All ties together with the spell woven in the Book of the Law really throughout his life. And it's just something I think he wanted people to sit with, and until they can like develop again redevelop these dormant faculties. There's a negative side essentially with the Mo Ion being a dark future, unless certain evolutions are made, essentially. But I think people are too stuck in the concept of these being angelic or demonic, even though there is one explanation or section where he goes into the angel essentially being tied to the future and the demon tied to the past, so to speak. But really the whole idea even also of that people perceive of the grays tying in with our future as well as the past, though, the indefinitely ancient past. The holy guardian angel alone can serve as a bridge between universe A and B. The higher and lower selves in man link him with the higher and lower realms of mankind, in relation to which he acts as a vehicle. The Devic, solar, and Asuric, terrestrial currents are therefore comprehended by these terms. Tiferet is the seat of this dual or two-way consciousness, and until man attains to Tiferet, he remains bound to the Asuric streams of consciousness, which render him unaware of, though not impervious to, the influences of extraterrestrial radiations. On the other hand, the holy guardian angel has its point of contact with man in Tiferet, links human consciousness with the zones beyond the solar universe. However, the angel's reflex also illuminates the deeps behind the tree. These comprise the Syriac, Set, Doth, and Luna, Lilith, Yesod, complices, which make any attempt to leap from the sun, Tiferet, to Sirius, Doth, exceedingly perilous. Not to mention the transplutonic leaps. So anyway, it makes me think of just the statement by Crowley of his work being a sort of rediscovery of the Sumerian tradition and the need for humanity to contact higher intelligences. I think that quote's in the very beginning of Outer Gateways. Yeah, my observation of the universe convinces me that there are beings of intelligence and power of a far higher quality than anything we can conceive of as human, that they are not necessarily based on the cerebral and nervous structures that we know, and that the one and only chance for mankind to advance as a whole is for individuals to make contact with such beings. But again, the need for a sort of solar consciousness is very important and emphasized. But again, that's why initiation is a sort of necessity for disclosure. The emphasis placed by Crowley and others on the necessity of establishing contact with the angel before attempting any traffic with goetic or Brahmalan demons, etc., thereafter becomes abundantly clear. Yet there are those who consider Crowley's remarks as mere rhetoric. They waive entirely the critical preparation and proceed directly with demonic invocations without having secured the key even to the first spaces, let alone to the zones that give access to the star beyond Yugoth and to the Mauve Zone with its evil genius, i.e. alien genius, who alone may unlock the dark angles beyond Doth. Many rituals of New Isis Lodge were designed to facilitate contact with these zones. These rituals are all described throughout Hecate's Fountain. as regards the principal participants at least, only after the link with the holy guardian angel has been established. It may be as well to say a few words more concerning the recorded Tibetan rites already mentioned, as there are to date no other recordings that can give the practitioner an inkling of the mantric vibrations that may be used to invoke the outer ones. The Tibetan magical complex in its Drukpa and Nyingmapa phases is perhaps the sole echo of a vastly ancient current. Unmistakable traces of it survive in the Bija mantras Om and Hum, which, although generally considered to be of Hindu provenance, originated at the Atlantean level of the cosmic myth cycles, having been deposited there from transmundane sources. Waddell refers to an ancient Tibetan book of myths which mentions several sacred objects that fell from heaven. So that's also a recurring theme, even with the so-called Roswell crash, which people again still are debating whether or not it was like a gift. They even call it that, but and the subsequent appearance of 5 foreigners who appeared before King Ori Nyan San, 331 AD, in order to inform him of the sacred nature of these objects. One of them contained the magical mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, which later became associated with the celebrated guru Padmasambhava. It is possible that the mantra was inscribed upon a stone, the famous Chintamani stone or wish-fulfilling gem fashioned of non-terrestrial substance. The aliens declared the sacred nature of the symbols, but, as Waddell notes in italics, without, however, explaining them. The entire transaction suggests a situation which today we associate with alien visitors from space and with traffic with extraterrestrial forces. It's just crazy how much some of these things repeat. I'm just fascinated with all these different references he makes to all these different books, and I've tried tracking most of them down, and then I go and read a little more carefully, and then find another reference to another book. So again, it's just crazy how none of this is even new. It's actually anciently recurring. I want to find where he mentions the past and the future. Here he also goes more into the John Levy Bhutan connection. Some of the more remarkable resemblances, again, the buzzing and humming associated with proximity of the old ones. In Bhutan in 1971, nowhere else, to my knowledge, do such close approximations exist, and if the student listens attentively, he will obtain a fairly accurate notion of the sonic effects which formed the background of the lodge rites. The lamasery in which Levy made his recordings nestles in a fold of one of the vertiginous slopes whose summits form the roof of the world. So apt is the situation that one wonders if such remote and fantastic scenes were not chosen specifically to facilitate intercourse with strange gods. The words of the Drukpa rituals are unintelligible unless interpreted in such a context. Listen, for instance, to the reverberant intensity of the somber incantations celebrating the great negative, the void. Sometimes little more than a whisper, they swell to a crescendo that seems to incite the very Qliphoth to respond on the surf of glistening shams. An almost parallel phenomena in a very different idiom occurs in some of the jump rhythms of the jazz musician Count Basie, who seems to express the formula of the voltigeurs. And there is no reason to make a distinction between his mode of invocation and the invocations of the outer ones performed at one time in the New Isis Lodge. The Drukpa, or cult, Pa, of the Thunder Dragon, Druk, also Dracula, the type par excellence of the Draconian current, is no less a vehicle of the Ophidian current than was New Isis Lodge or the present cult of Lam. Crowley considered Lam to be the soul of a dead Lama, see outside the circles of time. Nor need the gods invoked by the Tibetan rites be distinguished from the old ones who inform the 93-696 current. The following invocation from a Drukpa ritual makes this quite clear. Come here magically and unimpeded. Om Hri Sam Spring Shu Tri Gur Lan A Ra Badzra Bio Dza Dza. Those fortunate enough to have heard a competent lama intonating invocations will recognize the humming and buzzing quality of this mantra. O Red Killer in early times, surrounded by 100,000 attendant slayers. The mighty beings who summon, the demons who deliver, the lords of death who kill. Escort us and welcome us into whatever paths and places we visit. Accept these offerings with blood and meat, these holy things, this nectar. Libation is offered to the consorts of the 3 blood-drinking kings, to the 24 forms of Yamantaka, the 4 Mamo goddesses, protectors of the 4 doors, etc. In an invitation to Mahakala, the great black god, the positive form of the goddess Kali, allusion is made to the chief of the demons from the land of darkness, the Dharma Raka from the 9 hells, the noxious planets from the sky, the Naga demons from beneath the seas, and to the one with the bird's name. Record sleeve, Volume 1, see bibliography under John Levy. These few passages are sufficient to demonstrate the affinity between the pre-evil rites of the Draconian current and the present-day rites of the Drukpa cult. The Buddhist tantric rites of the Druk and Nyingma sects are derived from the ancient shamanistic bone tradition of pre-Buddhist Tibet. They in turn were carried over from infinitely ancient cults which had their roots in Atlantis. So, okay, I finally found it. Here he says in the chapter Colors of Chaos, page 207, the knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel, which formed the central initiation of the Order of the Golden Dawn, stood in relation to that order as does the Ordeal of the Abyss in relation to the Order of the Silver Star. The angel formulates the forward pull to the future, Iwas. The demon resumes the backward pull to the past, Shaitan. The human stands not necessarily midway between the two, and incarnates the present. Humanity therefore constitutes a stage only towards enlightenment. There could be other kinds of present, in-betweenness, or now. The word human, earlier uman, is synonymous with woman. It applies to the human race as being of woman born. But the essence of human consciousness is lux, light, or divinity. The root of the word divinity is the Sanskrit dev, deva, God, literally the shining one, not humanity. Lux refers to a celestial, not a terrestrial principle. Crowley regarded the formulation of communion with the angel as the next step in the initiation of humanity as a whole. It is therefore a progression to the future via Tifereth, the place of the angel, and so on through the abyss via Doth and beyond. But a counterbalancing backward pull towards the demon arises from the vortex created by kama, the emotions, and desire, which empty themselves into the past by the mechanism of nostalgia, via memory, yasad, and flesh, malkuth. The current earthed in malkuth, if not properly contained by appropriate seals or mudras, voids itself into the Qliphoth and explodes within the basins of Bestkul. From there it arises as a vapor which forms a veil over the abyss. The past and the future meet thus in the Mav zone, which is a subtle amalgam of the Qliphoth and the abyss. The full formula is of a circular or spiral nature, for the past passes over into its opposite, i.e., into the future, via the present. The temporal phases, however, are not 3 but 1. More properly speaking, they are 3 in 1, which appears as now, when now is totally realized. This realization is possible only when the human stage is no longer considered as such, but as an illusory line of division, like the equator, drawn between past and future, which are themselves illusory. Nonetheless, they provide an efficient means of translation from Malkuth to Kether via the 3 cosmic power zones, Yasod, past, Tifereth, present, and Doth, future. If this situation is grasped, it will be understood why so much emphasis has been placed by modern occultists on the knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel. And so again, all this the excessive fear of like demons is not even so much of a challenge when you have a magnetic energy center fully formulated and protected, essentially, strengthened and understood. But so much of this, I was like going through looking for that reference, and there's a lot of focus on this sort of situation and what Crowley's role in, I guess, bringing this wisdom was, but it seems to be just eclipsed for the more sensational view of it all. But that's really the best I can go into without just going into all the references one by one. But there's so many too, like I showed just for Lam and Mu and Ma Ion. Lam. Each book has so many different references. But this Lambika yoga factor is, I think, really important and underestimated. Ma'ai, the Eon of Ma, daughter aspect of Ma'at, the lesser cycle relating to the daughter darkness. As Set is to the Eon of Horus, so is Ma to the Eon of Ma'at, or the Eon of full manifestation, i.e., materialism or materialization at its height. The word of the Ma'ayan manifestation, the ultimate of materialism or materialization on the verge of dematerializing. The letters Ma'ayan begins and end the word manifestation, which he linked specifically to the Mani O or Mani stone called the Chintamani, which Nicholas and Helena Roerich are the ones who really popularized, but yet another ancient stone or Adri, essentially. Anyway, it just makes me think of this egg and that date and these confluences of, for lack of a better word, manifestations outside my awareness, even of the implications. But anyway, the Bindu chakra, what they say, it's at the back of the head while the Ajna is in the front. This also relates to essentially the churning of Amrita. The more active the Bindu chakra becomes, the more plentifully this precious Amrita flows. It is said in the ancient scriptures that just one concentrated drop is sufficient to make new shoots grow on a piece of dry wood and bring the deceased back to life. In Ayurveda, this life-giving nectar is known as Sanjivini Bhuti. There are yogis who eat no food and are nourished exclusively by the nectar from the Bindu chakra. If we were able to utilize this life elixir for our body, we would not only prolong our life, but also enjoy perfect health. But unfortunately, this precious nectar normally drips straight down into the fire of the Manipura chakra and is burnt before its effects develop. Through certain yoga practices, we can be successful in catching the drops of nectar in the Vishuddhi chakra and supplying the body. The Vishuddhi chakra is responsible for the purification and detoxification of the body if an imbalance occurs in the body due to harmful substances. In the Jaranda Samhita, verses 28 through 30, it is written, "The sun is in the navel and the moon in the head. The nectar that comes from the moon is consumed by the sun, and the life force is gradually used up in this way." Here the moon stands for the Bindu chakra, and the sun for the Manipura chakra, Because the nectar from the Bindu chakra is constantly being destroyed in the fire of the Manipura chakra, our body is susceptible to illness and continues to deteriorate with advancing age. Here it talks about the Kakari mudra. In order to be able to roll the tongue back far enough, some practice is essential. Yogis achieve this by carefully stretching the ligament beneath the tongue, gradually lengthening it through gentle pulling. In this way, the tip of the tongue can finally reach the uvula. Ujjayi pranayama is a breathing technique with concentration on the process of breathing in the throat. The throat is contracted slightly so that air flowing through it produces a soft sound, as in deep sleep. Through Jalandhara Bandha, the flow of energy is briefly interrupted and the prana is held in the throat. Another very effective practice is Viparita Karani Mudra, which has been translated as the energy regeneration pose in the system of yoga in daily life. The reason for this is that the nectar flows toward the throat in this inverted position and is therefore prevented from being burnt in the Manipura chakra. So again, Kenneth Grant notes this or relates this to the bat and the inversion Viparita. The symbol of the Bindu chakra is the moon. Therefore, it is also known as the Chandra chakra, moon center. In the inner cosmos, which is seen by our inner eye in meditation, the Bindu chakra appears to have a circular opening with a lid almost completely covering it, and from this, light shines through a small gap. This glimmer of light that is the emanation of the radiance of the self in the Sahasrara chakra is similar in appearance to the slender crescent of a new moon. If the Bindu chakra is fully awake and open, it shines brightly with a silvery sheen like the full moon. The moon is a symbol of perfection, nectar, and energy. Nature receives life-sustaining prana from the moon, allowing everything to grow and thrive, as moonlight is also essential for the growth of plants and the ripening of fruit, not only sunlight. In the Bhagavad Gita 15:13, Lord Krishna says, "When I come onto the earth, I preserve all beings through my life-giving power. When I become the nectar-giving moon, I nourish the vegetation." The moon is the symbol of Lord Shiva, and the mantra of the Bindu chakra is Amritam, I am immortal. At the end of the peace mantra, we sing Om Triambakam Yajamahe, Yajamahe Sugandim Pushti Vardhanam Urva Rukamiva Bandhanan Marityor Mukshya Mamritat. O my adorned one, the three-eyed Lord Shiva, who is omnipresent, may he nurture us and bless us with health. May his blessing liberate us and lead to immortality. This mantra is known as Maha Mrityunjaya Mantra, the glorious mantra of victory over death. May the light of Shiva fill our consciousness. May the nectar of immortality spread through and expand our inner space, Chidakasha. Through this nectar, all chakras are brought into harmony. Fear, sadness, anger, resentment, and other disease-producing emotions are released in the healing vibration of this mantra. May it spread fragrance, melodiousness, love, happiness, and contentment through the entire world. And then there's exercises. I just wanted to go through that really quick because, again, the Bindu is generally considered one and the same as the Ajna, but there's more to the physiology. Bindu is often merged with seed or sperm and ova. In the Yoga Chudamani Upanishad, Bindu is a duality, with a white Bindu representing Shukla, pure, and a red Bindu representing Maharaj, mastery. The white Bindu resides in the Bindu Visarga and is related to Shiva and the moon, while the red Bindu resides in the Muladhara chakra and is related to Shakti and the sun. In yoga, the union of these two parts results in the ascension of Kundalini to the Sahasrara. In Tibetan Buddhism, Bindu is a component of the subtle body, which is comprised of drops and winds, Degle and Relung. In Tantra, Bindu or Bindu Visarga, falling of the drop, is a point at the back of the head where Brahmins grow their tuft of hair. This point is below the Sahasrara chakra and above the Ajna chakra, which is represented by a crescent moon with a white drop. It represents the manifestation of creations such as consciousness. I didn't even realize that, but it's here with the rest of the 7 chakras. And so, really, this connection between Maha as uh, light, luster, a festival, really, it just shows the greatness of the Aham. But the part of the psyche which is regarded as the reservoir of the instinctual drives and the source of psychic energy, which is dominated by the pleasure principle, karma, and irrational wishing, and its impulses are controlled through the development of the ego and superego, or id. And what is Amha? Yet another stone, crystal, don't look. A transgression of moral, ethical rules or shortcoming from the point of view of religion, a sin, the state of most inconvenience, painfulness, or uneasiness, trouble, affliction, distress, deficiency. Amha, plural of amhi, we are, possibly relating to ama, unripe, or undigested, raw, which Kenneth Grant also relates to the goddess as well, and Amavasya, the new moon, the unripe moon. Anyway, so Ma equates with Mu, and Mu again in Greek is equated with Mem, the waters, which again are particularly unique to the life and the generative powers of Earth, or Isis, as well as possibly, a veil for the Amrita,